Let the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable to you, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Good morning. Thank you so very much for inviting me to be here today at Christ Church Cathedral. You are a remarkably generous congregation to Episcopal Relief and Development, and it's a great honor to be able to be here to thank you in person. In particular, I'd like to thank the Dean for inviting me, and as I said, it's a special privilege to be among so many, many generous friends and supporters. Jesus is not always received very warmly by those he visits. Sometimes people come out for the loaves and the fishes. Other times, as they did this morning, they chase him out of town. It can be hard in passages like this to draw a connection to our own lives. After all, the sort of demon expulsion Luke writes about are not something that we tend to associate with the modern era. Not only that, Jesus is thrown out of the region at the end of the passage. Jesus is the all-loving Son of God. How could he not only get thrown out, but thrown out for having done such a good deed? I know he suffered for us, but this is going a little too far. It's only when you step back and look at the story more holistically that the larger point becomes clear. The possessed man was known to his neighbors. He had been held in chains and in shackles. He had been possessed by the demons many times, and he kept falling under their spell again and again. And despite Jesus likely knowing he would be sent away afterwards, he healed the man anyway. Oftentimes, the problems our world faces can seem insurmountable. In addition, the loudest voices are often those who would rather give up than try and solve those problems. As followers of Jesus, it is our duty to know and to do better. Together, we can not only tackle the world's more intractable issues, but do so without any need for praise and recognition afterwards. How do we do this? In Matthew 25, Jesus states it very clearly. Feed the hungry, welcome the stranger, give water to the thirsty, heal the sick. In some, he says, truly I tell you, just as you did it to one of the least of these who are members of my family, you did it to me. You and I are meant to be the hands and feet of Jesus in the world, no matter what that brings to us. Episcopal Relief and Development exists to enable all of us to extend Jesus' healing to those both far and near. Our approach to extending healing includes investing in local communities and local leaders. And by putting these people first, we put ourselves last. We welcome our partners to create lasting change and to join us in being servants to all. Let me share with you how we, with your help and support, answer the call that Jesus asks us to take up. One of the most rewarding parts of my job is visiting the sites where we work all around the world. Earlier this year, I traveled to Zambia to visit our Moments That Matter program. That's our flagship program focused on early childhood development. Episcopal Relief and Development and the Zambian Anglican Outreach Program started the program over 10 years ago, so it's now mature and far along in its development. I've had the privilege of doing many program visits during my tenure of nearly 20 years, but I still find something unexpected and inspiring every time. Moments That Matter focuses on the critical first 1,000 days of a child's life. The quality of a care that a child receives during those first 1,000 days of life can impact them in ways that will last a lifetime. That's why investing in parents, caregivers, and young children during these critical ages and critical years is so important. Episcopal Relief and Development and our partner promote nurturing care that fosters responsive caregiving, good health and nutrition, and early learning and play, while working to reduce unhealthy environmental factors like poverty, malnutrition, and violence. Each community participates in an 18 to 24-month-long cycle of learning and promoting best practices for early childhood development. After each cycle, there's an opportunity to re-up in the community for another cycle. The idea is that by the third cycle, the program will be self-sufficient with only light oversight from outside. During my recent trip, I sat in on a home visit during cycle 1, where an early childhood development promoter, who is a locally trained volunteer, visited a caregiver's home for one-on-one instruction on good parenting practices. The engagement of both the promoter and the caregiver was remarkable to see. The caregiver was incredibly generous to let me into her home to observe such an intimate conversation and interaction. Next, I went to a Cycle 3 village where the promoters ran the program almost entirely independently, without any outside involvement from our partner. In these villages, the promoters already have training, so the primary learning switches from home visits to group classes. At the end of the class, the promoter asked the students, "What did you take home from these lessons?" And everybody's hand immediately shot up. They talked about how they had moved away from physical punishment for discipline to instruction and teaching about good behavior, how they had gone from colors and shapes with their children, and how they were now focused on nutritional meals for their kids. Over and over again, throughout the afternoon, I heard the phrase, "And I told my friends about it," or "I told my neighbors about it." In the kind of work that we do, that's the best thing that you can hear. If you have to do a program over and over again and nobody adopts or shares the practices, your program isn't working. Not only were the promoters essentially running the programs themselves, but the participants were passing on the lessons, making the positive parenting practices a part of the local culture. Now we and our partner, Moments That Matter, can move to new communities, knowing that the work that we have already done will be kept alive by the community itself, which was always our goal. A number of years ago, I made a similar visit to a community in northern Ghana, where we had been working to reduce child mortality. The visit had just concluded, and I had delivered some formal remarks of thanks and greetings from the Episcopal Church, and I was gathering my hat and my camera as I made my way back to the vehicle to start my long trip home to New York City. At that point, the village headman came forward to say that he had a presentation to make to me on behalf of the entire village. And as I sat back down, the headman said that although they had a gift to give to me, they were very embarrassed, as it was such a small and a poor gift. He told me that they had wanted to give me an elephant as a gesture of thanks, as that was the grandest gift that they could imagine presenting to show how important our work was to their community. However, he was embarrassed to say that they were too poor to give me an elephant. I was trying to imagine how I was ever going to get that elephant back to New York. Instead, he said all of the village family heads that had met that morning to discuss what would be the most valuable gift that they could give to me to show their gratitude for all that had happened in their community. They had decided to collect all of the eggs laid that day and present them to me in a bowl. He explained that the eggs represented the entire village's wealth. And while it wasn't very much, it was everything that they had, and they wanted to share it with me. They had painted the bowl in vibrant colors and included a picture of a flower growing out of the soil. He told me that the flower represented the abundant life that the Episcopal Church had brought to their village. He asked me to bring the bowl back home and to show it as a sign and symbol of their thanks and their love for us and our partnership. I keep this bowl in my office as a constant reminder of the abundance that can grow out of scarcity. We do not just need to look back to the gospel to see how our faith has an impact on people's lives. Our current era is full of just as many examples. Truly, I tell you, just as you did it to one of the least of these, who are members of my family, you did it to me. This applies at home, in our churches, and everywhere we work. Thank you for bringing the good news to the poor and fulfilling your baptismal promise to seek and serve Christ in all people through your support of Episcopal relief and development. Whenever I visit beautiful churches such as yours, I'm reminded of the story of one of the big cathedrals in England. I think it was probably Coventry. It was severely bombed in the Second World War. The roof was smashed, the windows were destroyed, and the walls were all very heavily damaged. Miraculously, though, the statue of Jesus, with his arms outstretched, suffered no damage except that the hands were knocked off. When reconstruction got underway, people naturally wanted to replace the hands. No, the dean said, we won't replace the hands. They serve as a wonderful reminder that in this world, Christ has no hands but ours. Amen.